You can just get started. This is an easy show. I'll just hit the old go live. We appear to be live. I have hit record and audition.
Yep, I hit it there.
All right. It's Monday, March 15th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is GeekNights. Tonight we are talking about cable management. So today I actually did a very in your late 30s adult chore because I've worked at a lot of places and I've accumulated, like I've rolled a lot of them over, but not all of them just because I was lazy and it didn't matter that much.
Retirement.
I've accumulated 5 separate retirement accounts with 5 different entities that were active and had money in them.
The first 2 jobs I had, I didn't even realize I had such accounts. Really.
That was what happened with my first real job. When I quit,
even my co-op when I was at RIT, there wasn't a 401k. There was like a profit sharing thing. I didn't even know. It wasn't much money.
Oh, IBM didn't have anything like that. They had a little profit sharing thing, but it was basically like I got $500 when I left.
Yeah, it was something along those lines, right? But there were like these paperwork just kept coming for it, and I was like, "How is this?" I finally figured out it was like, "Oh, it's money I have." Okay.
So what what triggered me to do this was I got that paperwork again. Like I had a 403B.
I don't get any paperwork anymore from anybody.
I don't accept. I had this 403B from Montefiore Medical Center back when I worked for the hospital, and it's like a magic 401k for nonprofits, and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
It had like almost no money in it because they didn't pay me shit back then. But it was making its returns. But every month they'd send me a paper statement, and the system was so out of date I couldn't get it digital, so I just ignored it. And then recently it changed. Like a couple years ago, I got paperwork that said, "Oh, it's changing to a different company." And then I started getting paperwork from that different company.
Yeah, that happens occasionally.
In the last month, the paperwork now said that it was changing to a third company, and it moved to a third company. And this third company was finally one that had a website and a portal that worked and was modern and advanced. I logged in and immediately rolled it over into my Betterment. Just like instantly.
Yeah, I just, with the third job I had that paid real money, not counting like, high school jobs or whatever, right? They had a real 401k that I contributed to and got matched and all the normal stuff. And then once I had that, I rolled everything over. And then every time I changed jobs after 90 days, I would always roll over. So I have all the money in one place. And when I got this job a few years ago, I rolled it over.
Yep.
So I haven't had to do a big combo. But the other thing is they've all been 401k rolloverable. I haven't had other like 3Bs or IRAs. So I haven't had
a bunch of mine were 401ks that got like turned into IRAs because of nonsense. Didn't really matter. But basically,
I've never had to mix and match, right? It's always been the same kind, directly rolling over at 100% of the money from one to the other. So,
but I basically spent a while figuring out the account numbers for all these things and doing all the rollovers. And it's interesting how
it's easier now. Every time I did it, even just a few years ago, I had to get the HR person at my company involved. I couldn't just.
Do you know how hard the reason I didn't roll over that one from Pipeline so long ago? Because after I quit, I thought, okay, I'll deal with that in a few months, after I get situated. And then the company went under. And it was hard to contact a person to deal with anything. And that was back before all these investment firms had portals that worked.
Yep.
There was a time when kind of like we did that e-commerce show where a lot of old e-commerce sites would be like, "Oh, now that you've chosen the thing you want to buy, here's how to mail us a check."
Yeah, the other thing is, the previous one and the current one were both Fidelity, which made moving the money easier, I guess. I don't know, or whatever. But, when I log into Fidelity, there's 2 accounts listed there. And the old one, for some reason, they didn't take all the money. It was like 35 cents or some number. They didn't get 100% of the money out of there. So it kept reporting on it. And I was eventually I called them and I was like, "Look, I got 35 cents. Can you just do something about that?"
Oh, that happened. So
what they did is they changed it. So now it says 0. It says 0 now. I guess they just took the 35 cents and ran away with it or whatever, but I don't care.
When you're 70, we're going to be in the retirement home playing Pendragon, and you're going to open the equivalent of how letters get delivered in that distant future, and it's going to be like, yeah, well, here's the $1.80 that you earned.
But the point is, the 35 cents is gone. I don't know where it went, but when I log in, it still shows both accounts, and it's like, can you just get rid of that one? It's like it's done, right? It's like close it. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what sucks about working in enterprise software is that I know why a lot of times you just can't get rid of that one. There's the same reason my Steam login still includes part of my social security number.
Yep. Anyway.
Yep. Anyway, but that reminded me of a related thing where I had a bank account that I didn't think had any money in it that I forgot about with a bank that I haven't been to in forever. And I eventually got a letter from the government that was one of those, hey, the government has determined that you are the custodian of this unclaimed money. There was like $400 in there.
It happens, yeah.
Problem is, I remember when I had that account,
in whatever
I could have really used that money back when I had that account if I had known it was there.
If you live in the United States, there's usually a website for your state. I know New York has one. I think the comptroller runs the website. I'm not sure. But basically, you type your info into this totally legit, make sure you find an actual legit one and not a fake one. But I know for sure that New York has a website where you type in your info and they find if there is unclaimed money in New York that actually belongs to you. It's like in this database, but you just can't get it unless you look it up. So it never hurts. There wasn't any money in there for me, but it never hurts to go. Everyone should go and take a look, if such a thing exists where you live. And if you are in it, because there might be money that belongs to you that for some reason the government is just holding and waiting for you to come and claim.
Yep.
It takes you 5 minutes to check. Google it. It's not a joke at all. I'm totally serious.
So in some news, one thing that has caused problems for technologists and humans for basically all of our adult lives, and this has been around for a long time, you experienced it this weekend. Daylight saving time.
Yep.
There's no S on the end, because remember, I was for many years a professional time nerd. Like my job was to set clocks.
Matters that much.
There's no fucking S there. Don't say it with an S. It's not daylight savings time. It's daylight saving time, as in we are going to save daylight during this time. Anyway,
daylight savings time mean the same thing. It's the time in which there is daylight saving.
The time in which there are daylight savings.
There will be savings of daylight during this time.
Yeah, but that's not the text of the bill that caused it to come into being, nor is it the actual proper name of the program.
The point that matters is that this is...
It sucks ass is the point.
This is closer to the correct position, right? A lot of people are complaining about losing an hour or whatever, and some people who hate sunlight are complaining about sunlight. But the point is...
Well, the first half of those people, you're not losing an hour. Time is arbitrary. For the second group of people, pound sand, we won. And we're going to win.
The point is, you want the clocks to stay, right, in a position such that there is more daylight hours when you're not fucking working.
When the typical person is home and awake.
Exactly.
Maximize the amount of time where the average person in America is home, awake, idle.
Or anywhere they live.
Well, because most places just don't bother with anything like this at all. It's very much like an American and European thing.
The point is, you're still choosing the hours, right? Even regardless of where clocks are, right? It's like, you could live in like Island X, who knows what time zone it's in, right? So you live on Island X. It's like, okay, at what time on the clock do people on Island X wake up? What time do they start working? What time do they stop working, right?
Yep.
It's like, it doesn't matter if you shift your clocks around, right? It's the times, that you could have a whole country or a whole society where people wake up at friggin' midnight, the equivalent of midnight, when the earth is on the exact opposite side of the sun is on the exact opposite side of the earth, right? And then you could all just decide that, and that's how people there operate.
Yep. Now, daylight saving time, I think we've talked about this on GeekNights a lot, but basically it exists solely because of the combination of it made sense in an ancient agrarian American time.
Yep.
Coupled with the fact that our government can't ever change anything.
Yep.
Except the clocks, apparently. But, and the thing it's most known for the last 40 years is fucking up a bunch of IT stuff between 2 and 4 times a year.
Well, not. I mean, you've got have your shit together now. My shit.
Yeah, you'd think that. You would think that. There are so many outages and weird problems around daylight saving time around the world 4 times a year.
I think it's been, close to like, maybe 15 years ish since I've had a database that wasn't full of just everything in UTC and that's it, right?
Yep. So honestly, it's not databases and like data quality issues. It's usually like DevOps, like real-time systems monitoring type stuff that messes up these days. Like that's what I see. But anyway, there is possibly literally the only thing that any American Republican in our government has ever supported that is actually a good idea. There is a bipartisan bill in the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, trying to do exactly what Scott and I have always wanted. Now that we've lost the hour, in quotes, and sprung forward into the correct time, the better time, the bill says, let's just fucking stay here forever and never go back.
Right. That's what we should do. But also that bill, I think, has come up many, many times. So it's not really news that it's up again.
Well, it's interesting that it's not clear.
We could have said that same news for, I think, probably every year of GeekNights.
Well, what's interesting is it's not clear why this bill never actually passes. No one disagrees with this except
it's not a high priority, and if it actually came close to passing, they'd start to report on it, and people hate change, so they'd get mad and Sitgo sign style. So if you're a representative, it's like, how hard do you want to push on this? It's like just to start a bunch of nonsense, and it'll be a huge news and more, when you're dealing with like something that's actually important, like, climate change or people dying. Why would you waste your time on this?
Yeah.
You just toss the paper out there and then it's like, that's it.
Yeah, there is evidence, though, that it would actually improve public health for reasons that are probably too much for this show.
There's a lot of things that improve public health.
Yeah, but this one costs us nothing and just makes the world a better place. We'll see if anything
requires someone to do work to push something through, and everyone's working on something more important.
Yep.
Or not working at all.
Yep. So we'll see if maybe, for once, this might be the last time this comes up, because there has been increased interest in removing this. As best I can tell, the people who are most against changing it in America are, I hate to stereotype as old people, but it seems like older voters are against it just because they're against stuff.
Right, but also I think I've seen a lot of people
I see a lot of parents
make the standard time permanent because they hate the sun.
They want it to be dark earlier for like reasons that are baffling and inscrutable to me.
Yeah, I don't know what's up.
A lot of it seems to be people who get up early and want to.
Anyone who's like, let's make standard time permanent, get your garlic.
I do know a person who was against doing what we wanted, who wanted to just stay in regular time forever, standard time. Their argument was that they get up early and punish all the people who don't also get up early. Force people to get up earlier. That was basically the extent of the argument.
If I was the boss of a company, and I didn't have to interact with other companies too much, I would just be like, yeah, we're going to we don't care what the fucking clocks say. We can start our work at any time we want, right? And avoid commuting traffic, make everyone's life better. You could make dentist appointments without having to take off work.
Yeah.
All kinds of good stuff, right? Anyway.
So in some other news, Twitter had a weird outage recently. They had one outage only in Russia because the Russian government messed something up when they were trying to censor stuff. But they had an outage like yesterday. I think it happened on Sunday and like a little bit over the weekend. Twitter accidentally started temporarily banning anyone who tweeted the word Memphis.
It's true. They fixed it pretty quickly, but I assume this is some sort of, mistake, some human error or some AI kind of error that must have detected some, pattern of bad tweets that had that word and then, honed in on that word and started, maybe some bots were using that word a lot. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's
mildly interesting.
It seems like what's been happening, because if you notice, the Twitter lately has been grappling with the fact that people can pretty easily manipulate specific words into appearing in the trending tweets. And a lot of people have been manipulating that lately. So I'm pretty sure Twitter tried to put in place some sort of anti-gaming system on that, but they made it generic. So it caught pretty much there's, the thing we always talk about. There's literally no difference.
Twitter's not going to explain it to us. So
No.
it's like,
But there's literally no difference between a lot of people being interested in something and a DOS. They're the same thing.
Of course.
So I feel like the real story here is that Twitter keeps trying to do these kinds of changes to clamp down on behavior that embarrasses them or goes against their monetization instead of applying it toward the thing they should apply it toward, which is harassment, racism, etc.
Yeah, of course. What else is new?
Yep. So you got any other tech news?
Yeah, so here's the news. This is a little bit old, like last month or so, but it's not really about this particular incident because who gives a crap about that? It's about the broader concept, right? Is that somebody made a browser extension, an add-on, right, for Chrome, Firefox, whatever. And when you have a browser add-on, in Firefox, at least, usually these things nowadays used to be that they would just have, full control of your browser, basically.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you'll have to grant the permission to your add-ons to do specific things, right? But if you want to, like your ad blocker, you have to give it a shit ton of permissions to actually block ads. You don't really have a choice there, right?
Yep. It's got to be able to see the content of the page.
Exactly. So when you live your whole life in this browser, if the add-ons that you choose to, the browser software itself, you have to trust. But you have to trust the add-ons you add to the browser written by some who knows who on, GitHub, whatever. You just take some code, put it in your browser.
Yep.
If that code has anything untrustworthy in it, it could just ruin you. It's there's only so many protections that the browser has to limit the power of any add-ons whatsoever. It can look at the web pages. You go to bank.com and it can just look and see how much money you have. Right?
Also, web browsers are a high value target for all the reasons Scott just described. If you compromise a web browser.
If you can control someone's web browser, you can have it do things. You can have it make web requests and do all kinds of net stuff. And, you just running JavaScript on someone's computer. It's thanks. Thanks for using your computer to run JavaScript, mine coins, do whatever bullshit, right? So what happened was there was an extension that was popular, and it was perfectly good. There was nothing wrong with it. But then the person who made that extension just sold it to someone else.
That's happened multiple times. uBlock got it changed hands at one point.
And that's why we use uBlock Origin now. Don't use regular uBlock.
Yep.
Anyway. But yeah, they sold it to someone else, and the someone else just put in some malwares. And that's that, right? It's a lot of times people trust something just because it's on GitHub. It's it's open source on GitHub. Therefore, someone must have looked at this.
Yep. I remember in the old days, people would be like, oh, go to SourceForge and get the thing. It's okay, this is something.exe. Just because it happens to be on SourceForge does not mean it's safe.
Mozilla and I think Chrome in their add-on stores, they do have programs where some of the add-ons are validated. They went and they checked and they said Firefox will go, Mozilla will go and say, yeah, we looked at this add-on and it's legit. You can trust it. At least if you trust Mozilla, then you can trust this add-on. And other ones are labeled as someone uploaded this and we didn't look at it. We're just redistributing it on the add-on store because that's whatever.
I think a lot of people,
if it's a shady add-on, please click this report button so we can block it, right? But in the meantime,
well, two things.
All your own risk.
Most malware will not let on that you are infected with malware, so you won't know to report anything. And two, a lot of people seem to think that, oh, it's open source, it's on some sort of repo, and it's open source. Someone would have noticed if it was malware. Guess what? Not many people spend their time going through Chrome tab suspender extensions to look at the source code and see if anything hinky is going on.
You go to install an extension, you see it's open source. It's are you going to put through the effort, or do you have the ability to look at it, investigate it, and determine whether it's malware or not?
Yeah, I can read code. That doesn't mean I'm going to see the malware, even if I try.
Why do you assume that anyone has done that even one time if you're not willing to do it that one time?
Yep.
Right?
And I think some people even get into big trust loops oh, I trust this extension because a bunch of my friends use it, so they must be smart and they all trust it because they know people. But at no point did anyone actually look and see that it's forwarding all your traffic to some dodgy IP address in Russia.
Yep. If anyone wants to do a good deed, pick one of your extensions that's a less popular one, right? Something like uBlock Origin, you probably don't have to do this, right? But find another one that you use and maybe read the code of it and make sure it's legit, and then let everyone know if it's trustworthy or report it if it's not. But yeah, just be aware of which add-ons you have in your browsers. That's the news there. Okay, other news, tiny news, right? We all know that companies all have these little HomePod things. I guess Apple is the only one that's actually called a HomePod. The Amazon ones like Alexa and the Google.
I don't know what's up with the Google, because Google changed its branding around this stuff a bunch of times, and I don't know anymore.
The Amazon one seems to be the winning one.
Yeah.
Right? Not that I would get one, but I'm just saying, like, it's got.
I have an old drop cam, and I think that like moved into the Google ecosystem, but it just won't work anymore, and I didn't bother to try to figure it out.
Point is, these things, I was really surprised that they became popular, because I feel like if you've got a big house in the suburbs, one little speaker, right, is like, okay, maybe you put it in the living room or the kitchen, like this main area of the house, but it's like, don't you kind of want to cover the whole house with it? It's like more of them. It doesn't seem too useful if it's not everywhere, right? And also, if you've got that much room, you've got room for like an actual sound system. Why do you want to have sound coming in this one little guy? Even though they are pretty impressive for being one little guy.
I mean, that little Sonos I got up there is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty impressive for being one little guy, but it's like, even in my house, I have two like sound systems with speakers in this little apartment.
So my grandparents, they had a pretty like swinger house that they built themselves, and the house was wired with a really fancy intercom system. So basically every room had stereo speakers in it, and you could use the intercoms to like ping other rooms and talk to people. And there was a central system that could connect the whole thing up to the radio, the hi-fi system, or the CB radio that was integrated into the house.
Yep, I've seen those. But anyway, the point is that Apple, they came out with their HomePod Mini at like their last, was it 1 or 2 keynotes ago, late last year. They're basically just like, the HomePod Mini was interesting because usually you have like iPod Nano, right? And the smaller one is better in a lot of ways, but is also worse in some ways, right? The iPod Nano did not have the storage or the battery life of the big iPod, right?
Yep.
It was lesser in some ways. The HomePod Mini definitely seemed to me, when they announced it, like, isn't it just better than the HomePod in every way? Like, in what way?
So reading this article, the HomePod Mini costs $99, a third the price of the HomePod, and offers notably lower sound quality.
Oh, okay. So
think speakers, physically smaller speakers are just worse.
True.
Full stop.
That's true. But in terms of any other kind of features besides the sound quality, I guess, it was just worse. I mean, just better.
Yep.
So they've just canceled the regular HomePod, and it's like, yeah, no one bought those things to begin with. I don't think anyone bought the mini one either. I guess maybe a rich person would put these in like every room of the house.
They're so expensive. I feel like someone who's rich enough, they're getting a bespoke system like integrated into the house.
Yeah, it's like, I really like, these are popular. People have them, but it's like,
yeah, if I was rich, you know what I'd mount?
If you're a person with a 1-room or 2-room apartment and you don't care about sound quality, and you're not really,
you want it to just work.
Listening person, and you actually talk to Siri or Alexa or whoever out loud for doing whatever it is that you do with that, then maybe that's for you. But like, I never understood who the hell these are for. Who wants these? It seemed like it's something companies wanted to sell, right? And in the same way that SUVs are something car companies wanted to sell, and they made people want them, right? So the companies, I think, have done they've done clearly an amazing job of making people want SUVs. I think they've done an okay job of making people want these, but there's only so much you can do to, right? In that
it's fascinating because my whole career, because I'm a product manager, like that kind of decision, I have always focused on what is a problem that I can solve for people out there where they would be willing to pay me for that solution. I have never in my life actually tried to say, I have a thing that's easy to make. I want to get people to buy this thing. Like that, I've never tried that. I've never even gone down that path.
But yeah, the point is, I don't know who these are for. It's not unsurprising to me.
Because think about it. If I was really rich, like stupid rich, and I wanted like a sound system in my giant sprawling house, I would have fancy speakers mounted into like the ceilings of every room, wired to a central system that is generic and can take literally any input in.
Right, but like I just don't know who you're only thinking about like the stereo feature, right?
Yeah.
The you talk to it, right?
Well, the other aspects of it, what I see, the place people seem to put these the most in my experiences, like pre-COVID, when I'd like be in someone's apartment or house, is they always put them in the kitchen, and they use them while they're like cooking and doing kitchen-y stuff.
Yeah, you can use it for a timer, but you can. I see a lot of people who use Siri for a timer. They just use their phone or their watch.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, if you have a HomePod, you have an iPhone, an iWatch, maybe, right?
Yep.
You definitely have an iPhone, no question. Right?
If they were smart enough to cement, like in real time, respond to me with more advanced queries, like Siri, how long should I cook?
The same Siri that's on the HomePod is in the iPad and the iPhone. It's the same Siri. Why would if I'm carrying my? It's like, what's the HomePod for?
Well, because my phone won't listen to me unless I touch it and turn it on. I have to keep turning it on.
You can make it not do that. You can.
I don't want it to. I don't want it to listen when I'm just walking
that's
around.
That's what this thing does.
And it can't play loud music by itself while I'm cooking, and there's a bunch of banging going on in the kitchen.
That's because you've never had an Apple phone or Apple iPad.
Even then, an iPad in the kitchen,
audio.
while that vent fan is going, compared to one of these things, there's no subwoofer in your iPad.
If the vent fan is going, even my real stereo with 5.1 sound, it needs to be cranked to a dangerous level. So I just turn off audio when the fan is on.
So, in some other news, this is this article. The thing that happened is terrifying to me, and it honestly, like, I already, like, LG has not really been on my,
It doesn't terrify me.
Well, it doesn't terrify me in the sense that I'm not vulnerable to this. I would never buy an LG TV.
Of course not.
Or an LG monitor or an LG anything. But
I got an LG monitor. It's fine. It doesn't have ads on it.
Yet.
I think it's going to be fine.
One day.
I think it's not connected to the internet. It's good.
Well, this one wasn't connected to the internet either. That's the problem.
Well, yes and no.
Yeah. So basically, you can read the article to see the details, because this kind of thing is happening in the low end of the TV market and has for some time. This is a trend in all industries. Same thing happened with, like, I don't know, e-readers. Cheap e-readers would like show ads on their home screen that you couldn't turn off. Like, that was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the margins on TVs are pretty low. And it turns out most consumers, unless you're rich and buying like an upper high-end thing, price matters.
Only rich people and, tech people who know about tech and snobs actually care about things like contrast ratio. Right? Most people just say, I get a flat TV and I get the biggest one I can afford, or that fits on my wall or whatever.
Yep. How big is it and how many dollars is it? That's it.
Yeah, they don't give a shit about anything else. It's only, people who care, like, oh, how's the color reproduction? Right?
Yeah.
Those are the only people who care about what anything else. So
it's funny. I got some
Best Buy and buying a TV off the rack.
I got some training at work on like setting price points and like market research on prices, like pricing as a topic. And it basically the thing that came up in the training, we were talking about how people actually make decisions based on data. The fascinating part was people like you and me who actually care at all about the specifications of anything we buy.
So
not only ultra rare,
insignificant. You might don't pay attention to
the advice is just pretend those people don't exist or cater exclusively to them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. We don't exist in the market. Same reason why like shitty airlines are all shitty in the same ways, because the only decision that matters is the number of dollars for the ticket at the time you buy the ticket. So the problem is, because of that, and because of market pressures and margins and everything, this kind of thing is now rising higher and higher into the stack, into like the middle of the road options. Basically fancy OLED TVs, not just the bottom of the barrel ones, but like an actual OLED TV from LG they have embedded ads that will play in the menus built into the TV.
Right. Well, it's in the smart TV portion, right? So if you're not using the smart part, it's not like it's going to go on top of like a movie you're watching.
Yeah.
Right? But when you open up the menus to do smart TV shit, like use the Netflix app built into the TV, right? So you press the menu button, this menu comes up and it shows you all these apps built into the TV, Netflix, Apple TV Plus, HBO Max, or whatever. And you're going to choose one. Well, there's a whole area on the screen for them to show ads, because you're in the LG OS. It's usually Android powered most of the time.
Yep.
Of I've heard that at least one of them is like still WebOS power. It doesn't matter what OS they're using, right? There's a little computer about as powerful as a phone, a shitty phone built into the TV that's doing this stuff. And this is why I never get a smart TV, right?
Yep.
The TV should be a monitor only. It should do nothing.
The problem is that really doesn't exist.
Signal I send into it. It does. There are still companies making monitors, and there actually is a trend lately of monitor companies making very large monitors.
Yep.
Right? Selling them as monitors, like buy this 55-inch gaming monitor, and it's like, that's a television.
Yeah,
right?
but look at this. That is called going after the Rim and Scott and 4 other people demographic right there.
But it's like Alienware has like a 55-incher, I think, or something like that. But the point is, it doesn't have smart TV bullshit in it. It is a monitor.
So where this ad cropped up was when this person went into the TV to update some stuff. The ad just played, and there's no way to turn it off. And this is a $1,400 TV.
Yeah, I mean, don't use... this is the advice we've always said and will continue to say. Do not buy a smart TV. If you have no choice but to buy a smart TV, do not use any of the smart things in the TV.
Never let it connect to the internet even once.
Connect the TV directly to the internet. Disable the Wi-Fi in the TV. Do not let it connect to your Wi-Fi. Do not put an Ethernet cable into the TV, right? Do not let it touch your home network in any way, shape, or form. Only use the TV for its, not smart functionality of other devices sending video signals to it, probably with HDMI because it's 2021. And, plug your switch into it, plug your HDPC into it. And if you really aren't going to have an HDPC and you got a Roku or an Apple TV or something, use those. Those are more trustworthy than the shit that's in the TV, right? An Apple TV is 10,000 times better as much as it's not good. And whatever's in any TV, even the best TV in the world, use that instead. And that's it.
Yep. And we need to agree, this kind of a non-consensual advertising creeping a higher and higher into the stack needs to be nipped in the bud, because this is only going to get worse.
It's not even just advertising, right? It's all the other security.
The security aspects of the Internet of Shit, coupled with the non-HTPCs, tend to not have the full functionality of a web browser going to the site where the content is, and have their own ulterior motives for monetization, and often their own algorithms to drive what kind of content gets pushed at you.
That's the other thing, is that it's just tons and tons of reasons we've talked about in the past, but do not, if you can at all, right, which you probably can, do not, you get smart TV, and if you have a smart TV, don't use the smart parts.
Yep.
At all, ever, under any circumstance.
And since LG is breaking ground in putting these ads pretty high up in the stack, my advice is never buy an LG device again, at least not a TV.
Yeah, I would not buy, if a company has a TV that has ads in it, I'm not going to buy a TV for that company.
Yep. I would, I would like to see legislation to make it difficult or impossible to embed ads in devices directly like this. There should be some sort of regulation around this, because really what this is going to turn into in the long run, only rich people and very technologically savvy people can avoid this shit, and everyone else is stuck with it.
I have a really easy regulation, because it's already been, I'm not a lawyer or a constitutional scholar or anything, but I am aware, correct me if I'm wrong, while speech is very strongly protected in the United States, commercial speech is not. It is illegal to have cigarette ads on TV.
Yep.
It used to be illegal to not have prescription drug ads on TV. You can't even have cigarette ad billboards or magazines anymore, right?
I would like to say they're ban this kind of ad, full stop.
Congress has the power to regulate commercial speech, full stop. They could write a law that says advertising is illegal. Any company that advertises, the CEO goes to prison for their life. That's the whole law. The end. Vote on that law. Vote yes. There are no more ads anywhere ever, or the CEO's in prison. Either one of those is fantastic. I'm not even joking. Just do that.
But anyway, things of the day. So check this out. This is actually a really simple video. It's Smarter Every Day, but I don't think I've ever actually linked to them, or if I have, it was a long, long time ago. But they did a really, really simple video, and this is my thing of the day to prove a point. This is just a video on how to use a snatch block and like how a block and tackle works, but it's not like the high school physics demonstration of this is why pulleys are magic. It's actually much more focused on the practical aspects of pulleys. Because a lot of
you've done a pulley thing of the day in the past.
Definitely not done this. I've done things in pulleys
a whole
before.
bunch of videos in my life where it's like someone lifts a real heavy thing with a rope because they got like 7 pulleys in line.
Yep, this is not that though. This is more like practically, like how do you as a person in your day-to-day life quickly and effectively deploy pulleys to solve real problems?
On my bicycle, effectively, kind of.
Yeah, and as much as I'm very like a lot of us, especially like the kind of nerd who listen to a podcast and cares about embedded ads in their smart TV.
Your garage door.
Yep. This is more like if you have to make a pulley or like deal with a pulley quickly or solve a problem. Like, I don't know, you ran your car into a ditch. How do you get the car out of a ditch? There's a difference between having this abstract knowledge of how technology works, like how to use a winch, and having an intuitive and internalized understanding of how to apply very simple and effective technology to quickly solve problems. People who are able to do the latter tend to survive things better and be more effective in their day-to-day lives. That's an observation I've had. So I'm going to try to focus.
Use the pulley.
The last time
think about it,
I had to use a pulley was actually in like for real, right? Like solve a problem with a pulley was we got a Jeep stuck in a ditch. But basically, all right, Scott, you got a Jeep. It's got a winch on the front.
I don't have a Jeep and I never will.
Let's say you do because you're driving off into the wilderness to find the last non-smart TV that some crazy billionaire hid in the wilderness. And you know where it is.
Call them up and tell them
you're in a Jeep and you get the Jeep stuck in a ditch. How do you get the Jeep out?
I'll leave it there and walk.
All right, now it is, you cannot make it out of the wilderness without driving.
Call for help on my phone.
Your phone's dead because you're in the middle of the wilderness.
Use a helicopter.
You only have a Jeep.
I'll walk.
You starve to death before you make it to the edge of the wilderness.
Well, I deserve it for jeeping.
Anyway, there's a naive way to use a winch and a very smart way to use a winch. And this is the kind of practical knowledge that people who do real physical work know, but a lot of nerds, as much as they think, oh, I know about how nuclear weapons work, and I know how a gun works, and I know how pulleys work, the practical application of those simple, like how to practically apply a lever, not actually that obvious or intuitive to most people, and they tend to fuck it up no matter how smart they are.
All right, so I don't know if I've mentioned it on the show before. I probably have. There's a thing called Pico 8. I think we may have talked about this when we talked about Gamer X at some point, because there were some really good Pico 8 games at Gamer X when we went in New York.
God, that was a long time ago.
Pico 8 is a fantasy game console. It doesn't actually exist, right? They just came up with, right, this game, and there's actually some competitors, or not necessarily competitors, but there's a few of these, right, where what if a game console existed that had this chip in it, right? So they just make an emulator for a chip that never existed, right? And it's like you just made a console, and now people can make games for that console. So Pico 8 is one of those that makes games with a particular aesthetic. But, and there's been a lot of really high quality Pico 8 games I've seen in my time, especially on itch.io. But I've discovered this recently because everyone was tweeting about it. I think it had maybe a big release or something. I don't know. But what this is picoCAD. It is itself a Pico 8 application. So you need to run it on a Pico 8 or on, in your browser, you can run the Pico 8 emulator, right? It's just free. And then it lets you make a 3D model and sort of color it and texture it. A really simple pixely 3D model that looks like it's from something even less than like a PlayStation 1. We're talking like Virtua Racing from Sega, but maybe with like better color and textures on it. And you can't make your model too complex, or obviously you start to run out, hit the artificial limitations of the Pico 8 console that doesn't exist. But you can make 3D models of like a particular and awesome aesthetic using picoCAD, and then you can use those tiny models in perhaps some other Pico software you're going to use. It just exports to like totally normal files. You can load them into like, whatever.
Well, it looks like the most recent update is exporting to Outage and MTL, so you can import them into like Blender and Unity.
Yeah, you can Unity. Yep, you can just you can make stuff in picoCAD and then import it into your actual outside softwares.
Yep.
And perhaps, I don't know if you can do vice versa. I don't know. But
I doubt it. This is just, it looks really cute and easy to use.
Is quite, imagine if there was like, it's almost like a Mario Paint situation, right? Where it's like, you could use your Super Nintendo to make Super Nintendo sprites. Well, you can use your Pico 8, your, in quotes, your Pico 8 to make Pico 8 models, right?
Has anyone made a physical Pico 8?
I mean, generally, you can just take like a Raspberry Pi, put it into a box, and run Pico 8 on it, right? So, and then you can put Pico 8 ROMs right onto cartridges. I'm sure someone's done that. There are some competitors. I forget what they're called, because I think Pico 8 itself technically isn't like the open source. Like, it doesn't cost any money, but I don't think it's open source. I'm not sure. There's another one I think that is fully open source that's a little different, but not bad. I look it up. I don't know.
Yep.
But that's it.
In the meta moment, we're still stuck at home, but we are reading The Tale.
I am reading
The Tale.
But I am progressing.
Hanzo is done. We're back to Genji. Here we go.
The first novel that has ever existed. The first, literature written by a human that is in the format known as novel is The Tale of Genji. And we are reading that book.
And my advice to you so far, if you're picking this book up, either because we're finally reading it or because you're a new listener, or you waited until we started reading it before you dove in, my advice is, if you read like a page or two and you're a little bit confused, like you don't know exactly who one of the characters is, my advice is to just keep going. And you'll kind of figure it out later anyway, so it won't matter that. Like, if you don't...
At the beginning of each chapter, at least in the edition...
Oh, yeah, it gives you a list of all the characters that are in that scene.
Right, because, in there trying to keep with the, I guess more... it's not ancient, but, the traditional older style Japanese that this is written in.
People are referred to obliquely.
Right. Yes, in that old style of language, people are not always referred to in a clear fashion. It would be like if I wrote a whole something in English and I kept using pronouns all the time, right? Something or using other ways to refer to a person, like the gamer. I just said the gamer every time, right? And it's like, well, but it's in a room full of gamers. Which person are they talking about? I don't know. And that's the way that, so in trying to keep with that old style language, the translation, right, uses pronouns and other ways of referring to someone all the time instead of just saying their name often enough, right, that you can tell who the hell it is. So you have to figure that out.
Yeah, but seriously, just steamroll through. As long as you understand what happened in each scene, it all slots together like pretty easily. Like you'll kind of just get into a groove with it.
Yep. So that's that. Tale of Genji. Any other meta things whatsoever?
I mean, there's light at the end of the tunnel on the vaccines to the point to where at some point this year, there's a chance Scott and I can record something together again. But
there's a non-zero chance, but it's there's even a non-zero convention chance, but it's way low.
Yep. And it gets higher toward later in the year, like November, December, definitely. But
right. we're talking like lottery tickets here.
Yep. So yeah, a lot of projects are on hold until post-COVID, just because, like we've said before, it is such a pain in the ass to record a panel in this environment that we have only done it when absolutely forced to.
Yep. All right. So cable management. I'm pretty sure we did a show on this and you deleted it.
Yep, we did a show in the best I could find, September 28th, 2017, we did a show on desks, but I poked at it and we seemed to almost entirely talk about the form factor of desks themselves. And I'm pretty sure I talked a little bit about like rack cable management back in like 2006, but that was back when shows didn't really have topics necessarily.
Yeah.
Like we did a show once called Games where we reviewed like 7 tabletop games in a row.
Right. The point is, when it comes to cable management, right, at least for an everyday or even a technological person, I really see four categories, right, that come to mind in my life, right?
Yep. Well, how do you
Category-
deal with his telepathic powers? How do you deal with his telekinetic powers?
Right.
Is he current timeline cable or is he from the future?
The four instances I have to manage cables, right, are inside of a computer. You're building a computer. There's cables in it.
Yep.
Right. You're outside your computer around your desk. You've got your monitors, your computer, and your mouse, your keyboard. You got to wire everything together. That's case 2. Case 3, you're in a data center and there's mostly networking cables, but also power cables and other cables that need to be.
Which I did professionally for many years. I managed data centers and also personally pulled cables. I can talk about that at length.
And then the fourth one would be you have a home theater and you're cabling, you got cables going from the TV to your HTPC to your game consoles to your power outlets. All right. There is some other ones that I have not had to do personally.
Like we're not talking about like cable management in a house. Like that's just home.
Right.
repair.
You might work at a phone company. You might.
Yeah, we're not talking about telcos either. Like
you might be in like the stage business, theaters, or concerts and wiring up those sorts of things. Or you're DJ, you got to wire that stuff up.
Yep.
Right? But most any serious electronic system of any kind, we still depend on wires in 2021 to some degree. Not everything is wireless, so you have to take physical lengths of some sort of metal in some sort of shielded sheath of some kind with connectors at the end to connect one thing to another thing. And when it's only one thing to another thing, it's easy. You just boop boop, done, right? But often you will have several things that need to be connected to several other things in the proximity to each other. And if you just connect everything boop boop one at a time, it will work. And it will also be a mess.
you get a desk that looks like what my desk looked like in the early days of GeekNights.
Right. So we got to do some sort of trickery, right? It's not easy to connect all these wires in such a way that they are neatly organized, clean, and pleasing to the eye, or perhaps the god tier, invisible.
Like I'll admit something that bothers me viscerally whenever I see it, even though I would never like say something if I was in someone's house. If there's a really nice TV hanging on the wall and 3 or 4 different cables just coming down the wall at 3 or 4 random angles coming to a center.
Well, the
inverted pyramid.
My TV doesn't have a pyramid, but they're all just sort of going straight down because it's like there's not.
That's
much
better than the inverted pyramid in my mind. Not by much, but it is better. But I guess
mostly just because I've got the power cable, and I've got like 3 HDMI cables coming out, and then I've got for the Wii, I've got this component cable.
I've already decided how I'm going to handle that. I'm going to hire your guy to mount my TV on the wall after COVID. I'm going to actually mount a cable channel inside of the wall and have a port at the bottom, or maybe even in the other room for all the.
To do that, but I don't. This isn't. I don't. I rent. I don't own. So
you can just, Scott. I already cut multiple holes in my walls to run cables. You know what I'll do when I move out? One, I might just leave them because there's no way the building would notice. Like there's an extra faceplate that looks just like all the faceplates that were there when I moved in over a decade ago that has some Ethernet in it. Where does that go?
I mean, if
I'm just leaving it there.
If I wasn't renting, I would absolutely do that.
Or two, if it was a problem, all I'll do is just put plaster over it and leave the cables in the wall and just move out.
Yeah,
but
if I was,
yeah, but I think we'll go inside out. We'll start with inside the computer and work our way out. But the parameter we're only talking about semi-permanent cable installation, because permanent installation is like I am wiring a house fully and permanently. Like these cables will never move. Like that's when you're zip tying cables directly together and like permanently sticking them somewhere, gluing them, whatever, putting them inside of something you can't get them out of. But and temporary, like if I set up a computer in the living room to do like all the cables I laid to record that panel we recorded for PAX Online, I just let them lay everywhere because as soon as I was done recording, I rolled them all up and put them away. Like, don't manage those. Just let them be.
Yep, exactly.
Inside the computer counts as semi-permanent because you want them to be nice in there, but you don't want to like permanently mount them all somehow because What if you add a new hard drive to your computer? What if something breaks or changes? Like, there's a lot of reasons you might have to go inside your computer and move one of those cables.
You also want to keep them nice so they don't restrict or mess up the airflow in a computer.
It's funny, in the old days, this actually, like, you kids are lucky. Computer cable management is orders of magnitude easier than it used to be. We used to have these fat ribbon cables. They were like 2 inches wide.
Yep.
And you couldn't even make them smaller. If you tried to like bundle them together, you'd get signal interference and like your hard drive would get slower or not work.
They used to sell some that would be like, that would be sort of do the inverted pyramid on both ends, right?
Yep.
Where, like the middle was wrapped tight around itself.
Yeah, but those were kind of expensive and sometimes had problems, and those came late to the scene later. Also,
one thing that's nice nowadays is you might be, most of the cabling inside of a computer, at least, in these times, is, every hard drive has to have a power cable and a data cable, even an SATA drive.
Yep.
If you can make a computer with only M2 drives, which I think most people can get away with, and then you have a NAS, then you don't need any of that. You could just not have hard drives in your computer that require any cables, and you've just taken away so much of the wires in the computer.
Yep, like in the old days, you had to plug so much crap in. Like, oh, you got a CD drive? All right, plug the PATA cable in, parallel ATA, but also plug in the magic cable that made audio come out of it.
If you've only got M2 drives in your computer, the only cables you need are basically from the power supply to everything. And is that it?
And you gotta plug the stuff that's on the front of your case into the headers on the motherboard.
Oh, right, yeah.
But here's the magic. The thing that changed for all of you isn't just that all this old fuddy-duddy stuff disappeared. Like, you'll never have to worry about a ribbon cable again in your lives. But also, cases got way better. Like, computer cases used to just be, like, no one even thought about the user experience of one of these things. Like, you would have to unscrew the entire thing to like move a hard drive, like literally take the whole case apart back in the day. Motherboard went straight into the back, like there was no room behind the motherboard. Nowadays, honestly, you know what my cable management strategy is? Buy a nice case. It has channels behind the motherboard, but inside the case. Yep. Cram everything back there. Don't really care if it's ugly because no one can see it, and it's not in the way.
Yep. That's what I do too. I do. There are channels back there with little like.
Emily's new case has like multiple sets of channel. Like it's so fancy back there.
Channels. But basically, the way the cases, they know what you're going to be putting in there. They know the power supply goes here and such. And nowadays, power supplies have modular cables, so you don't need to. Like I used to have all these just cables sitting in the computer because the power supply just had like a big crazy number of wires.
I cut them off one of my power supplies.
Could be a little dangerous. You got to tie them up, right?
No, I cut them off, and then I terminated the ends.
Yeah, you got to terminate or something, right?
Yeah, don't leave the bare copper just hanging out.
Is now they're modular power supplies. You only put the cables you need and no extras, right? But then you take those, they go. There's a hole. There'll be a hole near the power supply where those cables can go directly behind the motherboard, right? Because the motherboard's mounted on a plate. Then they can go up or sideways or wherever they need to go. And then there'll be holes near the places they need to pop out and then directly attached to whatever they need to attach to. So it's like, there's where the motherboard has its ATX power connector. And there's a hole right next to it.
Yep.
So the power supply cable goes behind where no one can see it, pops out in the front, connects. And then once you've connected everything, on that back plate behind the motherboard are like little ties. So you can sort of bundle the cables together into little groups. So they're not just, a mess. But even if they are a mess, it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Yep. In fact, you can even leave a few extra cables back there and tuck the ends out of the way, and then you buy a new hard drive, just pull those little ends out, plug them in, good to go.
Yeah, even if you do have, SATA cables still like I do, it's like, you can route them generally with the same kind of method. It depends on your case.
Yep.
But just try to hide as much as you can, and your case will look pretty nice.
The cool thing is a lot of modern cases
behind the motherboard
will have a whole separate section in the bottom for basically just the power supply. And usually if you do have giant old spinning hard disks, they usually put racks down there for those too, so they're just completely invisible.
Yep.
What the listener pointed out, the fans in the early days when all this crufty stuff, it used to be easy. Cases just didn't have fans usually.
Mm-hmm.
Then fans appeared, but there was nothing to plug them into. You'd have to
And
like,
your motherboard has spots for the power to go, and if it's a fan that needs power supply power, you do the same thing. The wire goes back, and it pops out near the fan.
and the cool thing is most nice cases will come with fans like already in all the right spots, and usually even have cables running through the channels to the place that's likely near where you're gonna have to plug them into the motherboard. Like standardization happened of all the things that the ATX specification didn't specify kind of naturally, and you'll always be able to take advantage of that unless you buy a super shitty off-brand case.
Yep. All right, so the next kind of cable routing, let's go to the TV area, right? So as Grim was saying, you know, if you've got a situation where the TV itself, like mine, has like 4 HDMI cables going into it because you got 2 Nintendo Switches and an HDPC and all this stuff, right? If your TV's on a table of some kind, it's not too big a deal, right? You can just do sort of normal cable routing, right? You know, tie things up nicely with cable ties.
Yep, all my cables are tied up with cable ties sitting behind the like entertainment center shelf where unless you really go back there and look, like you're not going to see them.
Every single cable I have, I went on the internet a few years ago and I bought a package of like 100, you know, like a hook and loop, right? Velcro cable ties. And what I did is basically every single cable I owned, except for the ones inside a computer, but even some of the ones in the computer, but mostly the outside computer ones, USB cables, HDMI cables, power cable, all those sort, right? Anytime I came across a cable that did not have a cable tie on it, I put a cable tie on it. And that cable tie could be used if the cable is put away. I'm not using it right now. I could bundle it up with that little cable tie. And if I am using it, I can bundle up the slack on the cable with the little cable tie, or combine it with other cables because they all have cable ties, right? They can grab onto each other to form a nice cable channel that is nice and clean instead of a spread out, you know, indecipherable mess. So that's step one. But if your TV's up on the wall, elevated, Rim was correct. It looks fugly, as mine does, where the cables are just coming down the wall.
My best advice is mount as much as you can on the back of the TV. I see a lot of people do this. Like they'll mount the TV on the wall, but they'll also stick stuff like the power, like anything they need to make the TV work, or even a tiny HDPC in some cases.
An Apple TV can hang on the back of a television really easily. It's tiny. My HDPC is too big for that.
Yep.
But
I mean, mine's the size of a VCR.
But it would be possible for me, if I really wanted to mount the HDPC on the wall behind the TV. It could happen, right? Now you're thinking, wait a minute, you put more stuff on the wall, more stuff on the TV. Those cables still need to go down, right, somewhere. Well, no, not really, because what happens is the HDMI cables are now all in one place, right? They're going from the devices on the wall into the television. They're all up there already, hiding behind the TV. The power cables need to go somewhere. Well, what you do is you take your power strip and you put that up there.
Yep. Now you just got to get one cable to that TV for power.
The cable that has to come down from the TV is the power cable from the power strip, and you can hide it in a channel or hide it in the wall or something else like that. If you can't do that, you can do what Rim's doing, which is where the cables go into the wall or into a plate that's on the wall, right? And then you have sort of down near the floor, you have some sort of exit where the cables come out.
Yep.
And then that stuff is where you connect to everything else in a hidden fashion.
Now, I like the plates. I like the idea of you have plates where like you could like they literally have like HDMI and DisplayPort and USB like ports on them.
Right. Yeah, up on the high on the wall, there's an HDMI hole, you know, and on the low on the wall is an HDMI hole. Inside the wall is an HDMI cable, as long as you never have to upgrade that HDMI cable to a newer standard.
Yep.
And even if you do, it's only a minor pain in the ass, I guess.
But another way to go that actually is a lot easier for people is you might have one of those two might have the whole, like the proper like plug just coming out of the wall, usually the one that's the most visible. But on the other end of it, usually hidden behind the TV, you get a faceplate that's basically just an open hole with some stuff to make it easy for cables to like kind of hang there easily. And you just jam the cables into the wall through that big hole because no one will see the hole.
Exactly. But yeah, you just want to find it's really about that gap, you know, that's where the unseemliness is between the TV and the, you know, because your power outlets are going to be near the floor. I guess if you make your own house or something, you put the power outlets up near the TV and get really fancy, right? And if your TV's on certain kinds of arms for mounting, right? So my TV arm doesn't have this too much. It has a little bit, but my monitor arms in the arm of my monitors there is a channel for cables to go. So basically
Yeah.
all the cables from the monitor get bundled up, they go into this channel, and then they exit at the, where the arm clamps, right, onto the back of my desk. They exit there. So you really, don't have them just like flopping all over the place. It's pretty nice. And, TVs can do a similar thing. Find, some sort of channel or pipe or raceway or something for cables to go in.
Yep. When in doubt, if you're on a budget.
It's about aesthetics, right? The cables themselves are ugly. You're just trying to hide them.
Yep. Now,
can
cable
even just wrap
channels.
them in like a tube.
Like,
doesn't matter.
They're actually, if you're willing to put up with cutting them to the right length yourself and you're okay with them smelling bad for like a week, go on Amazon and buy like the cheapest cable channels. They usually stick to your wall with like adhesive tape. They look fine. They just work, and they really clean everything up. Just get like some black or white ones and just plan them in advance. Like the only other thing you really got to think about is plan what you're going to do before you start sticking stuff in places.
And how long lengths, right? You're going to need, as soon as when you try to organize things into channels, that takes, because you're not taking a direct route from point A to point B. You're going.
Your cables need to be longer than you might realize.
You need more length than you realize. And you have to consider the maximum lengths possible for certain kinds of cables when you're doing this, right?
Yep.
Not granted, there's the advertised specified lengths for different cable standards. And I've seen many cables exceed those specs, and I've never seen one not work.
I've seen higher end, like later USB that's too long has trouble, but like USB 2, you can make a USB 2 cable scarily long, and it's fine.
I've seen Ethernet so long it shouldn't have worked, but it worked. Right? So,
but the thing I got to do is I'm actually going to mount the dock for the Switch on the wall, I think.
You can do that.
Like right next to the TV.
Yeah, there are other solutions to get creative for things like that, because the Switch itself, the bottom of it is just USB-C.
Yep.
So you could have like, you could get some third-party Switch dock that's like the one I have that's like just like a little adapter kind of guy. You can hide that and just have a USB-C cable like off in the corner somewhere. So you don't even have a Switch dock around.
Oh, I mean, the pro move is I would like to route a few cables like through the ceiling. I don't have any place to do this in this apartment, obviously. Like I can't dig it. As much as I'm saying I'll dig into my walls, I'm not digging into my floor. But I would love to run like some USB and a couple other cables from that wall under the floor to like behind the couch. So if I'm sitting there, I could plug something in. Like say I needed to use a wired controller for some reason, just plug it in right there. That is like S tier.
Yeah, if you want to get something from the TV to the couch, right, the best thing to do is called a Raceway. You've probably seen it. It's basically like a little rubber guy that's, and the point of these is actually more of a safety issue. If you're setting up something temporary, you'll just use like duct tape to cover cables because people could trip over them when they're running around on the floor, right? But if you have a more permanent situation where this, maybe you're in a conference room in an office, and the conference table's in the middle of the room. All the cables on the conference table go into the middle, down inside the table, so the table is clean. But then they have to come out the bottom of the table, and they're all together, but they need to get to the wall, and the wall is far away from the table. So you have this thing, it's a Raceway, is what it's called, and it's basically just like a little rubber thing with holes in it, and all the cables can go into it on one side and out on the other, but when you plop it on the floor, the bottom of it is flat. So it lies flat on the floor, and the top of it is rounded. So if you have like a chair with wheels or a wheelchair or any sort of thing that needs to, move around, a person's foot, you won't trip over it because it's just a rounded thing on the ground.
Yep, like in the old house in Beacon, to get a cable where we needed, because we tried to run it through the walls, but like the interior walls were insulated for some reason. Like that house was weird. But we'd literally just cram the cables into the corner of the room, like kind of into where the carpet met the wall, and just jammed it under there. That actually works pretty well, especially in older houses that have carpet.
Yeah, or you can go up and over doorways or all kinds of situations.
And unless it's a power cable, you could even just like run it under your carpet sometimes.
TV or around the desk, right? I think
desk is tough because it's so specific.
Is it going to be on the floor or is it going to be up on the desk, right? If it's down on the floor, your challenge is the cables that go from up to down, right? Again, up, the same as the TV situation, right? From your monitor to the bottom, your keyboard.
My advice is one,
right?
if you can.
To the bottom. However, you're going to make those transitions, right?
Yep. If you can do it, get a power strip mounted on your desk in some capacity.
other side of the desk. So like, for example, on the right side of my desk, I've got like, there's a scanner way over there, but my computer is way on the left side of my desk. So I got like an extra long USB cable. I need some sort of horizontal path for it to go without just sort of draping.
Nah.
They do make desks that have like channels in the back for things to go horizontally. And what you can do then with those is take all the cables that are on the desk and send them into the channel. And then underneath the desk, everything exits the horizontal channel where the computer is and goes straight down.
Yep.
And that's a good way to go.
Now, the cheat mode is if you have a big enough space, is you can just buy these.
I can't hear him at all.
Oh, you finally noticed. Scott finally noticed that he couldn't hear, that he was not hearing my audio.
Yeah, I finally noticed why I couldn't hear your audio.
Oh, you can hear me again.
Yeah, I was trying to I was trying to turn on the hockey game and I didn't want the hockey audio to interfere with the podcast. And
I can't, because of the way I capture your voice, I can't actually turn on the blab seal yet.
I turned off my own headphones.
I realized I started to talk about cable channels and raceways and stuff, and you just kept talking. So I was like, okay, he'll figure it out.
Yeah, I figured it out. I turned off my own headphones.
All right, I'll just
So
jump
there
in
you go.
right here. But one thing you can buy if you got like an older desk that doesn't support any of this stuff, as long as you have space for it, you can buy these like wire cages that you stick on the back of your desk and just cram everything into these wire cages. The other pro tip is get a power strip that you can mount. And like if you have one of those desks that has like a top part and the bottom part, seriously, mount a power strip in the top part, like behind where your monitor is going to go. If you have like, because then you can plug your monitor and anything else on your desk, like speakers that needs power, into something also on top of the desk without having more cables going down.
The power strip that is not on the floor, again, same as with the TV situation, is a pro move. It keeps the power cables from going right from high to low. They could just, bring, and then way the power, anything that combines cables, right? You want to bring the combining part as close to the things as you can. And then just the one cable that comes out of the power strip is the one that makes the long run that where, is unsightly. But it's like, it's not unsightly. It's just one cable. No big deal.
Yep. The other thing I found is that a cheap way, even if you don't make a nice, clean aesthetic, do something to get your cables off the floor, even if they're still a mess. That'll save you a surprising amount of hassle as the years go on, like more than you realize. Cables that are touching the ground will accumulate dust and grime that is not actually that easy to get rid of unless you crawl under there and like wipe them down periodically.
It's also hard to like vacuum. Like you ever take your vacuum and you go down there, it's just cables, vacuum.
Or you try to sweep and and they're touching the ground. You might like sweep a cable out from under your desk. Oh fuck, what was that even plugged into?
Yeah, so my cable game right now on my desk is kind of good. It's like the best I've had it, but it's not perfect, right? Because I got some speaker cables going up to the ceiling way above to a high shelf, and they're not hidden at all. They're just, they're tied together, but it's still not that great.
Oh, I've got a horizontal
While on my desk, I've hidden everything, but once you go underneath the desk, it's hideous, right? So
Emily solved that in a really good way. You know what she did under the desk? She put her computer back, like straight behind where her feet are, and turned it sideways so the glass and all the bling is pointing out, and all the cables are just behind the computer where no one can see them.
Maybe. But yeah, I think I'm going to basically make a little plan, figure out everything, every wire, like a little piece of paper, right? The length I need for each one, maybe buy some accessories, right? And then,
the plan, I guess that's the advice for all of this. Make a plan, like literally sit down with a piece of paper, look at your desk, and like write down all the things that need to be plugged in and what they need to be plugged into, and draw. Where are these cables going to run? How do I want this to look? Like the more you plan in advance, the more you can get the right tools to do the job. And even if you do something kind of inelegant and hackish, you'll at least have a plan going in and it'll turn out way better.
And if you go online, look at examples of what other people have done. There isn't like one best way, but there are people who have like setups where like you don't see any wires at all.
Yeah.
A lot of those people are doing stuff like wireless mouse keyboard and,
Also, a lot of those people live in not New York, so they have a slightly bigger area to work with than I do.
Yeah, exactly. They have less constraints and whatnot, or they can modify their walls and things like that. But you can go really and get pretty fancy and learn from what other people have done with fancy setups. And it's just like, it's nice to not have wires everywhere.
Yep.
Right. It just even if you just personally you're just like, I don't care, it's like, I don't understand that. It's like, it just feels better to have things be clean, right?
Yep. And then when I add something to my setup or change something, it's like, everything's a lot more modular and easy to work with, which scales up to, and we won't talk about this very long because we've gone on plenty of time, serious cable management, which you can have a full-time job doing and it'll pay pretty well.
Right.
Like
in the data center.
that matter. It's basically all the concerns, like even aesthetics. Aesthetics actually matter to a degree in that kind of environment. But the real reason you organize the more serious professional stuff is that you need to be able to very quickly fix something that went wrong, add something, remove something, change something, understand something. And you might know where all the stupid cables on your computer go. But if someone else comes over to your desk to try to deal with it, like something breaks, how well are they going to do if your cables aren't organized? Now imagine if that desk is a bunch of servers that are doing something important.
Yeah, it's like no one has to understand, right, how my TV is set up, right? And it's like only I do.
Like if I was on a long business trip and Emily had to like use my computer to recable everything to make GeekNights happen, like worst case scenario, unplug everything, figure it out, plug it all back in. Like, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's not that many, but if you're in a data center, it's like you have to know whoever's working there has to be able to tell what the hell's going on, even though they weren't involved in setting it up at all.
Yep. I don't think I ever touched what the things I used to set up when this was my job. I would never touch again. Other people I never met would touch them if there was a problem. So I had to make sure it was perfect. And my advice to you professionally there is honestly, one, learn from whoever you're working with. If you're working a data center, it'll be obvious immediately if they're doing a good job or a bad job with this. If they're doing a good job, figure out who made it a good job and learn from them and do whatever they're doing. Like don't try to reinvent the wheel. The things you might think are an obvious good idea are not, for reasons that you won't know right away. If they're doing a bad job, you have to make a very important decision. Do you care or not? Because if you don't care, don't touch it, because as soon as you touch it or talk about it, you're going to be asked to fix it. And that gets to my final piece of advice. If I was tasked with setting up a new rack, like a standard computer rack, fully loaded. So there's 20, 40 units. So say there's 4 switches and 20 computers and some other bullshit in there. I would budget for myself, if I was cabling that up and doing nice cable management, 4 full working days, 8 hours times 4 to do those cables right. It takes a long time to do it right. And however long you think it's going to take, unless you have been doing it a long time, just triple whatever you think. And that's the estimate you should go with, and never, ever cut corners.
Or including the time it takes to plan it out, right? It could be a situation usually where it's been planned out and you're just making many racks that are all the same.
Yep.
Right. But the planning part, right? It's like, okay, the rack will have this and this and this and this, and the wires go here. That will take you some amount of time.
And especially it depends on are you just adding rack 11 to a rack, they're just adding 10 more computers of the same kind at the end of a row? Or is it this is a bespoke rack, or you're doing your own thing? Or did someone do a bad job and you've been asked to fix it? That task is almost impossible.
Also, the one last thing about data centers is that there's messy data center, obviously, right? And then you look at one that looks really nice. You got all these networking cables, they're going into these channels in between the racks, right? And then they come out the bottom, and then they're routed through the floorboards, and they're, standard good job data center. It seems like every couple of years I'll see a picture of some data center that is doing something that's just new and incredible and different with their cable management.
Well, because so much has changed. In the time,
so many new developments in this area.
Yeah, right? You'll have a whole row of racks that are all direct DC powered. There's no AC power fucking anywhere.
Right. And it's that's not even that new. So if you are in an existing data center, you only have to get it up to the good level. That's all that, it's how much better is that better level? But if you're making a new data center, right, from nothing, you should go and find out the best and the fanciest one, and then make sure the whole place follows the same, stuff, even if you're doing different things in different areas.
Yep, consistency is key. If you're like literally down to the level of this kind of this kind of networking will be on green wires and this other kind will be on blue wires. Like the more standards and like consistency you can make, the better.
Mm-hmm. All right, I need food.
Yeah, and the hockey game started. I think we're good.
Yeah.
One of the listeners just said, I'm just going to